Emily and I had been married for almost 8 years, and for most of that time it felt like we were on solid ground. We had our routines, morning coffees together, walking our dog, Baxter, in the evenings, and the occasional date night. We were one of those couples that other people thought had it all figured out. We met during a party in college, and I remember thinking she was the most magnetic person I'd ever encountered. She had this way of lighting up a room, making you feel like you were the only one who mattered. But in the last year, things changed. Emily had started spending more time at the gym, coming home later than usual. At first, I thought it was just a phase. She'd mentioned wanting to get into better shape. But then, she started canceling our usual weekend plans, saying she was too tired or that she had to meet up with her friend Jessica. It wasn't just the gym, though. She seemed more distant, barely engaging in conversations, spending more time on her phone with a smile she couldn't quite hide. When I asked about it, she'd laugh it off, claiming it was just memes or harmless gossip. I brushed it aside, thinking that maybe she was just going through something and needed some space. But then came that night, the one where everything started to unravel. One night, I woke up and noticed that Emily's side of the bed was empty. It was almost 2 a.m., and I thought she might be downstairs watching TV. But as I walked down the hallway, I noticed a faint light coming from the garage. I crept closer, listening through the door, and that's when I heard her voice. She was on the phone, pacing back and forth, talking quietly to someone. At first, I thought she was talking to Jessica again, but then I heard her say, "I can't wait to see you again, but I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. It's getting harder to hide." My heart started racing, and my mind spun with possibilities. Was she talking about work? Something else? I didn't want to believe what it sounded like, so I walked back to bed, trying to convince myself that I'd misheard. The next day, I acted like everything was normal, but that conversation was all I could think about. That weekend, I decided to do something I'd never thought I'd do: go through her phone. I waited until she was in the shower and opened her messages. That's when I found the texts from Brad, a guy she'd met at the gym. His messages started out innocent enough, but quickly got more suggestive. And then I found the photos. She had sent him selfies, the kind she hadn't sent me in years. Pictures of her in her workout gear, posing in the mirror with that flirty smile. My heart sank. There were messages about sneaking out to meet, him saying things like, "Last night was amazing," and her replying with heart emojis. I felt like I was going to be sick. That night, I tried to keep my cool. Over dinner, I asked, "Hey, who's Brad? You've mentioned him a couple of times before." Emily looked up at me with an expression so casual, it almost made me doubt myself. "Oh, he's just a guy from the gym. He's going through some stuff, so we talk sometimes." I tried to sound casual too. "It just seems like you talk to him a lot, especially late at night. Are you sure that's all there is?" She paused, then gave me this withering look. "Are you seriously accusing me of something? I've been friends with guys before and you never had a problem with it. What's changed?" But I wasn't backing down. I pulled out the screenshots I'd taken from her phone and laid them on the table. "Care to explain these?" Her face went pale for a second, but then she recovered, flipping her expression into one of pure anger. "You went through my phone? Are you out of your mind? Those messages don't mean anything. Brad is like a brother to me. He's been struggling and I've been there to help him out. God, why do you have to twist everything?" Her reaction threw me off. Was I really overreacting? She managed to make me feel guilty for even bringing it up, and I started second-guessing myself. Was I being too paranoid? Maybe I was just projecting my own insecurities. But then, late at night, when she'd fall asleep, I'd scroll through those screenshots over and over, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Our everyday life started to feel like a charade. We still had breakfast together, still walked Baxter, but there was a tension in the air that we couldn't ignore. I felt like I was living with a stranger, someone who could look me in the eye and lie so easily. It was eating me up inside, but I couldn't bring myself to press the issue further. I kept waiting for her to crack, for her to admit that something wasn't right, but she didn't. Instead, she acted like everything was perfectly fine, like I was the one with the problem. About 2 weeks later, Jessica, her supposed best friend, called me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to Jessica much outside of group hangouts, so it was weird hearing from her directly. Her voice was shaky, like she wasn't sure if she should be talking to me. I don't know if I should be doing this, she started. But I think you need to know the truth about Emily and Brad. It turns out, Jessica had known about the affair for months. Emily had sworn her to secrecy, telling her that she'd end it soon, that she just needed time to figure things out. But Jessica couldn't stand seeing how Emily was treating me, especially after I confronted her. I don't want to hurt you, but Emily's been lying to both of us. She's been planning to leave you for Brad once she's sure things will work out between them. I thought you deserved to know. It was like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. All those doubts I'd been burying, all the guilt I'd felt for not trusting her, it all came rushing back with a vengeance. I thanked Jessica for telling me and hung up, feeling a mixture of gratitude and fury. #6. Confrontation. Calling her out. That night, I waited for Emily to come home, but this time, I had a plan. I laid out everything Jessica had told me, along with the screenshots. I talked to Jessica. I told her. She told me everything. Stop lying to me. Emily's face went from surprise to anger in seconds. Oh, of course Jessica would stick her nose in this, she sneered. She's always been jealous of us. She's probably making up stories to split us apart. Jealous of what, Emily? I snapped back. Of the lies? Of the fact that you've been cheating on me for months? Why would she lie to me about something like this? Emily's face softened, and for a moment, I thought she might actually come clean. But then she doubled down. She's had a crush on you for years. She's always wanted to be with you, and now she's trying to get between us. Don't you see what she's doing? I didn't know what to believe anymore. But one thing was certain, I couldn't keep playing this game. In the days that followed, I found myself swinging between rage and despair. I'd go to work and pretend everything was fine. But as soon as I got home, the weight of everything would come crashing down. Emily acted like nothing had happened, like we hadn't just had a screaming match about her secret relationship. She even suggested we take a weekend trip to get away from all the stress. It was almost as if she thought she could charm her way back into my good graces, and that only made me feel worse. I started noticing more of the little things that I'd ignored before. She'd hum happily while making dinner, but then I'd see her slip away to check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd kiss me goodnight, but then spend another hour scrolling through messages. It was like she was living two lives, and I was just an accessory in one of them. Just when I thought things couldn't get more confusing, I got a Facebook message from someone named Greg. He claimed to be Brad's husband. Yes, husband. I stared at the message, convinced it had to be some kind of joke or scam. But curiosity got the best of me, and I replied, asking for more information. That's when Greg dropped the bombshell. Brad wasn't just cheating with Emily. He'd been leading a double life of his own. Greg had found out about the affair when he stumbled upon a burner phone that Brad had been using to talk to Emily. I know this is a lot to take in, Greg wrote, but I thought you should know the truth. My marriage is falling apart too, and I don't want you to go through this alone. I confronted Emily yet again, this time armed with Greg's messages. So, did you know Brad was married to a guy? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Emily's eyes widened, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely thrown off. What are you talking about? She demanded. Brad never mentioned being married. He told me he was single. Of course he did. I shot back. You both lied to each other and to me. Was any of this real? Or were you both just playing some twisted game? She looked like she wanted to say something, but instead, she just stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sat there in the empty kitchen, listening to her footsteps fade upstairs, feeling more lost than ever. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every moment of our marriage, every decision that had led us to this point. It was clear that there was no way back. I met with a divorce lawyer the following week, and he advised me to gather as much evidence as possible before making any moves. So, I kept acting like everything was fine while I documented everything. The messages, the late-night arguments, even the times she accidentally let Brad slip into conversations. Emily must have sensed something was up because she started trying harder to reconnect, suggesting movie nights, even surprising me with a weekend getaway. It was like she was trying to patch over a wound that was too deep to heal. When I finally handed her the divorce papers, she broke down in tears, pleading with me to reconsider. "I never meant for things to go this far," she sobbed. "It was just a distraction, okay? I was feeling lonely, and you've been so distant." I stared at her, feeling a hollow emptiness where my love for her used to be. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. It's over." She signed the papers, but not before throwing one last accusation at me. "You'll regret this," she spat. "Jessica's probably laughing right now, thinking she won." But I was done listening to her lies. The days after she moved out were the hardest. The silence in the house was deafening. Even Baxter seemed confused, wandering around looking for Emily. I couldn't sleep in our bed, so I crashed on the couch, staring at the empty walls. Mark, my brother, insisted I come stay with him for a while, so I packed a bag and headed over to his place. Mark was a lifesaver during those weeks. He didn't pry too much, but he made sure I had someone to talk to, even if it was just about the game we were watching or the latest movies. Slowly, I started to feel a little more like myself. The divorce was finalized, and I moved back into the house alone. Emily had left a few of her things behind, which I packed up and dropped off at her new apartment. Greg and I continued to stay in touch, bonding over the strange twist our lives had taken. He even joked about how we should start a support group for spouses blindsided by their partner's secret lives. As strange as it sounds, I found comfort in those conversations. He understood the confusion, the betrayal, and the weirdly bittersweet relief of knowing it wasn't all my fault. Just when I thought things were settling down, I ran into Jessica at a coffee shop. She seemed nervous, like she had something she wanted to say. After a bit of awkward small talk, she blurted out, "I think I made a mistake, telling you about Emily and Brad. She's been blaming me ever since, saying I ruined everything. She even tried to get back at me by spreading rumors at work." I shook my head. "I'm sorry she dragged you into this, Jessica. But honestly, I'm glad you told me. I deserved to know the truth." Jessica hesitated, then reached out and touched my hand. "I know this sounds crazy, but I think I've always had feelings for you. I just didn't know how to say it." I froze, unsure how to respond. Was this really happening? The woman who'd exposed Emily's affair was now confessing her feelings to me? I muttered something about needing time to think and quickly left the coffee shop, feeling like I just stepped into another plot twist I hadn't seen coming. As I drove home, I thought about everything that had happened. Emily's betrayal, Greg's unexpected friendship, Jessica's confession. Life had a way of blindsiding you with the unexpected, and it rarely played out like the stories you hear about. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that people are messy, complicated, and sometimes downright deceitful. But I'm learning to let go of the bitterness, to forgive myself for the things I didn't see. And maybe, just maybe, I'll learn to trust someone again someday. Until then, I'm just trying to focus on rebuilding my life one day at a time. And if anyone else finds themselves in a situation like mine, here's my advice. Don't ignore the signs, and don't let anyone convince you that your instincts are wrong. You deserve better than a life full of lies.